Meteorologist Trey Fulbright here. We have another week with wildfire smoke over the skies in central Iowa this afternoon, and we're going to look at some of the causes of this wildfire smoke, where this latest round has come from, and why we've seen so much of it so far this year. Again, this is a look at the smoke analysis here derived from satellites over the last 24 hours, and you can see that smoke, this latest round, coming in from another set of wildfires burning in the parts of southeastern Canada, particularly over the provinces of Quebec and Ontario. So you can see that smoke moving in from the east and then kind of circulating around here underneath a ridge of high pressure. That's our source region for the smoke. And while we have seen it a lot in the skies here locally, we've seen some of that mixed down to the surface, creating hazy conditions. It's been much worse for our neighbors off to the east here. You go over to parts of the northeast United States where you're closer to the source region of those large wildfires. You can see thicker concentrations of smoke moving through parts of southern Canada into New York State, Pennsylvania, even down into parts of the East Coast, creating very hazardous air quality. So as we look at the air quality map here across central Iowa, generally looking at moderate to unhealthy for sensitive groups here this afternoon over a good part of the state. So if you do have breathing issues, or if you have sensitive health effects, do keep that in mind and be careful. But take a look at what our neighbors to the east are dealing with here. You're looking at the air quality being categorized as unhealthy to very unhealthy for all groups here over parts of New York State, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, Connecticut, as that smoke is really mixing down to the surface behind the cold front. And these are coming from multiple wildfires that are burning out of control over parts of southern Quebec and Ontario. So we had one round of wildfire smoke back at the end of May. That smoke came from Alberta and British Columbia here into the upper Midwest, but there are more fires burning in the parts of southeastern Canada. So we'll take a look at what's been behind Canada's very active wildfire season so far. So for that, we're going to look at the general weather pattern that is set up so far this spring, because that's going to tell us a lot. So the jet stream that we've seen, the jet stream pattern that we've seen, has been one that has been splitting here over the North American continent. We have one branch of the jet stream, that's the polar jet. You can see that going way up into northern Canada, and then the subtropical jet over the southern half of the United States. And so the subtropical jet right now, it's in a phase where it's becoming more active as we are moving into an El Nino. That is a phase, that is a very large pattern that has to deal with sea surface temperatures in the eastern Pacific that warm up, and that can influence the jet stream's strength and position. But we're seeing that subtropical jet strengthen and the polar jet weaken. And so when that happens, we see a large split here, as you see over the North American continent. And that's been the case for much of the spring. Now, underneath this splitting jet stream here, we have that blocking pattern in place here, where this jet stream is beginning to kind of buckle. And so in the humps of a buckle here, where you see the pattern kind of go up into like a hill-like pattern, we call that a ridge. And underneath the ridge, that is where you have sinking air. That sinking air, it's in the upper levels of the atmosphere, and it sinks, it warms, it compresses. And so the mid and upper levels of the atmosphere are warmer than normal underneath this ridge of high pressure. So how does that influence the low level conditions? What's going on down near the surface? Well, as that air sinks underneath the center of that ridge, it begins to compress, it heats up. And so the air underneath that becomes hotter as well. So now you're talking your low level and surface temperatures being much hotter than what they would normally be. And so also that begins to limit rainfall as well. If the air is sinking, it's warmer aloft, you're not going to get showers and thunderstorms to form. You need colder rising air in the upper levels of the atmosphere. You need colder air aloft to induce rising motion. And so you don't get that underneath a ridge. And so you kind of see that stair-stepping effect there. You start out with warmer than average temperatures, dry conditions that leads to the onset of rapid drought growth. And then you have more fuels available. So then once you get that right spark there, you get a wildfire to develop, and then the conditions are in place for those fires to become out of control very quickly. And that's what we've seen a lot over the Canadian provinces so far this spring. So we'll look at some data here showing how bad the rainfall has been, or the lack of it, here over parts of western and central Canada. Central and western provinces of Canada have only seen 10 to 30% of normal rainfall be from late March through the early half of May. And that was right before the onset of those very large wildfires that began in British Columbia and Alberta. You remember that round sent smoke into parts of central Iowa during the last couple of weeks of May. They got a little bit of rain, and so their conditions are still, there's still numerous fires burning, but then we've also seen eastern portions of Canada dry out as well. And so that's kind of that latest onset of big wildfire activity that we've seen over Quebec and Ontario. You can also see the impact here of that ridge on our temperatures as well. Not only has it promoted a drier than average spring, but also a warmer than average spring as well, with some of these yellows and reds indicating an unusually warm spring. And there have been some analysis done on this that parts of Western and Central Canada have seen a record warm May, the warmest May on record here. So that's something that is definitely pretty significant, and that'll definitely exacerbate your fire conditions. So how are things changing here with regard to the climate? Because we know we are in a warming climate here, and that warming climate is unfortunately likely going to continue to induce more fire weather days here. This is how fire weather, the number of days and fire weather has changed across the United States since from 1973 to 2022. And you can see parts of the Western US and then even some locations out to the east have seen an increase in the number of fire weather days. So what does a fire weather day consist of? Well, you have to have higher winds, warmer temperatures, and very low relative humidity. And so you remember that blocking pattern we talked about earlier that developed over Canada this spring? Well, part of climate change is slowing down the jet stream. It's going to induce more blocking patterns like we've seen. And so areas that end up under these blocking patterns will be more susceptible to droughts, heat conditions as well. So once a fire is started, the environment will be much more favorable for significant fire spread. So we'll continue to watch that here as we head into the summer, likely going to see more episodes of smoke here into parts of central Iowa as we see those fires continue to burn out of control off to our north.